Welcome back to the Bad Influence Podcast, Relationship Wednesday, where we help you how to build the relationship you want. I'm the bad influence that you need in your life, Bjordan Banderas. All right, let's get real for a second. How many times have you heard people say, but we love each other? As if that's enough to hold a relationship together. For me, it's way too many times to count. Way too many. Probably it's the same for you. But listen, I'm going to drop a truth bomb right now on today's episode. Probably you're not going to believe this, but this is true. There's research that back this up. Psychologists, psychiatrists, relationship experts talk about this. I'm talking about how love is not enough. I know, sorry to break it to you, but I had to break it to you. If you think that love alone is going to get you through the tough times, you're in for a rude awakening. Don't get me wrong though. Love is powerful as hell. It's the fuel that gets a relationship started, but it's not what keeps the engine running. And yet, so many of you fall into the trap of thinking that if you just say I love you enough times, everything will magically work itself out. Newsflash, it won't. I've seen this so many times in relationships, in toxic relationships, where the two people in the relationship always say to each other, I love you, I love you, I love you. So many times it loses its meaning. There's no love there. There's nothing like that. But they just keep saying it like it's gonna keep the relationship together. They say that just so the other person doesn't leave the relationship and shit like that. Right? But today, we're going to break down why love isn't enough and what it really takes to build a relationship that actually lasts. By the end of this episode, I want you to walk away with the understanding that love is just the beginning. Intentionality, effort, and commitment are what turn that spark into a roaring fire that can withstand anything. If your relationship feels like it's on shaky ground, or if you've ever wondered why love sometimes doesn't seem to be enough, this episode is for you. So, here's the problem we don't talk about enough. I don't see a lot of people talking about this. That's why I decided to break it to you and talk about it. The biggest problem that I see with people, or that I observe with people, is that you've romanticized love so much that you think it's a solution to every relationship problem. You grow up watching movies, listening to songs, and reading books that tell you love conquers all. I've seen those movies. Back in the 90s, early 2000s, there were a lot of movies like that. Now, there still are some movies like that, but they're not as good as before. But let me ask you, how many of those relationships do you see on TV last past the credits? Right? Because I've seen people say like, oh my gosh, that relationship on this TV show, even though the show is scripted, is so good. But after the credits, what do? Each actor goes to their partner, their house, wherever. They don't go to the same house together most of the time, right? So that's the love that I'm talking about. That's love that doesn't last. That's fake love. That's where people have romanticized all this bullshit about love. That's where they get all these weird ideas that love will fix everything. But here's the thing. What they don't show you is the work it takes to build something real and lasting. They don't show you that on TV, right? They only show you the problems, then they say I love you, and then everything is fixed. That's it. That's how they fix problems on TV. The truth is, love without effort is empty. You can love someone with all your heart, but if you're not putting in the work, if you're not showing up for them and for the relationship every single day, it's going to fucking crumble. Love alone doesn't fix communication problems. It doesn't solve financial stress. And it sure as hell doesn't keep a relationship strong through life's challenges. Because in a relationship, life is going to fucking challenge you. But if love doesn't keep the relationship together, what does? The answer is simple, but it's not as easy to find. I'm talking about intentionality, effort, and compromise. That's what keeps the relationship together. And that's where so many people get stuck. They think because the love is there, the rest will just fall into place. They're like, well, I love the other person, so everything else is gonna be hunky dory. But when things start to get real, to get tough, when shit hits the fan, they realize love isn't solving the issues. That's the real problem. People expect love to do all the heavy lifting when it's the effort you put in that makes or breaks the relationship. I've been there myself. My wife and I love each other deeply, but love wasn't enough to get us through some of the darkest moments. Let me tell you about a time when everything felt like it was falling apart. My wife was going through a rough health crisis. Like I have mentioned multiple times, she got sick. There's nothing that we can do about that. And everything hit us all at once. And I was working long hours trying to make ends meet because we lost her income. We barely saw each other. And when we did, it was just constant stress. We would fight over the smallest things. Things that had nothing to do with love and everything to do with the pressure we were both feeling. At that point, I realized something huge. Love alone wasn't going to pull us through. I love her, she loved me, but our relationship was fraying at the edges because we weren't putting in the intentional effort to communicate, to listen, to support each other. We were letting life pull us apart because we thought the love would be enough to keep us together. But it wasn't. So, what did we do? We got intentional. We went to couples counseling. We needed a referee. You never know, right? We learned to check in with each other, having hard conversations, making time for each other despite the chaos. We didn't just say, I love you, and leave it at that. We made sure that our actions match those words, which is something that a lot of people don't do now. I don't know why, but all you guys are doing out there is saying, I love you, and then sitting on your ass not doing anything, not proving it, right? And that's when things started to change around for us or turn around for us. When we started doing this. And that's the point I want to drive home today. Love is the foundation, but it's the daily actions, the small efforts, and the tough conversations that build the walls and the roof. If you're not willing to put in that effort, love alone won't save you. You can have all the money that you want, but if your partner doesn't feel love the way that your partner needs to be loved, they're going to leave you. They're going to move on. They're going to find someone that is going to give them the love that they're actually looking for. So here's where everything changes. When you stop relying on love to do all the work and start being intentional about how you show up in your relationship, it's a mindset shift. It is a mindset shift. Instead of thinking we love each other, so we'll be fine, you start thinking, how can I make sure we're fine? How can I actively contribute to the health of this relationship? That shift is powerful. Once you realize that love is just the fucking beginning, you start putting in the work. You stop taking the relationship for granted. You don't just assume things will work out. You make sure they do. And that's when the relationship starts to grow stronger. For my wife and me, that meant creating space for honest conversations, even when it was uncomfortable, because sometimes those conversations are going to be uncomfortable. It meant carving out time for each other, even when we were both exhausted. It meant willing to put in the effort to understand each other's needs instead of assuming that love will just magically fill in the fucking gaps. And let me tell you, once we started doing that, once we started being intentional about how we treated each other and our relationship, things change. We were not just surviving anymore. We were thriving. And right now, we are thriving. We are doing better than ever. And that's what I want for all of you. Now, I'm not just going to leave you hanging. No, I'm not. A lot of people leave you hanging and don't give you any advice and anything like that, right? But I want to give you some real practical tools to start building that strong relationship beyond I love you. The first thing, you're not gonna like this. This is a C word that a lot of people, particularly guys, run away from. Communication. And I don't mean the surface level, how was your day? Nah, fuck that. I'm talking about deep, intentional conversations where you're not just talking, you're listening. Ask your partner what they need from you, what they're feeling, and really, really, really hear them. Sometimes the biggest breakthroughs come from the simplest questions. I've done this. This has worked for me. That's why I'm giving you this tool. The second tool, another C word that people run away from. Can you guess what it is? No? Okay, fine. I'll give it to you. Consistency. One grand romantic gesture is great, but it's the small daily acts of love and support that really fucking matter. Show up for your partner in the little ways, whether it's doing the dishes without being asked, sending them a message to let them know you're thinking of them, or just being present when they need to talk. Those small acts of effort are what builds trust and intimacy. Now, let's move on to the third tool. It's another C word that people run away from. Let's see if you can guess. I'll give you some time to guess. No? Okay. Here we go. The third tool is compromise. I know. Right now, a lot of people probably just turn off the podcast. They're like, this is not for me. But that's fine. You do need compromise in the relationship in order for that to work. Here's my biggest pet peeve. One thing that drives me fucking nuts. I have heard so many fucking times single motherfuckers saying that in a relationship you don't need compromise. But I can tell you this from my own personal experience. That's bullshit. And if you hear this from any relationship expert or guru, wherever, they're lying. And the other thing, like I mentioned, usually single people who say this. If compromise is not needed in the relationship, how come they're single, right? Obviously, their fucking advice doesn't work because they're not willing to compromise. Because here's the thing. A strong relationship isn't about one person always getting their way. No. No, it is not. I'm sorry to break it to you, you fucking red pill motherfuckers that are pouring all this bullshit advice out there. A relationship, it's about finding the middle ground where both people feel valued and respected. That means being willing to give a little, even when it's hard. It's about understanding that sometimes your needs will take a backseat to your partner's, and that's okay. And finally, the last tool that you need to have in order for you to be able to build a relationship that you want, a relationship that's going to last, is intentional effort. You can't coast in a relationship and expect it to grow. No, you can't. A lot of people do this and then they end up single. Or they end up mistreated and they end up bitter and in a toxic relationship. Here's the thing though. You have to make the decision every single day to put in the work. Whether it's setting aside time for a date night or simply making sure you're emotionally available for your partner, that effort is what turns love into a partnership that can weather any storm. I can tell you that. Me and my wife have weathered a shitstorm. And when you stop relying on love alone and start putting in the work, everything changes. You stop feeling like you're constantly walking on eggshells or waiting for the other shoe to drop. Instead, you feel secure. You know that no matter what life throws at you, you and your partner can handle it together because you've built a foundation that's deeper than just love. Your communication improves because you're not just throwing I love you around as a band-aid. You're having real, meaningful conversations. Your trust deepens because you know that both of you are committed to putting in the effort day in and day out. And that's the kind of trust that builds a strong, lasting relationship. You'll also notice that you start to grow together instead of apart. So many couples drift because they're not actively working on the relationship. They're coasting on love, and before they know it, they've become strangers. But when you're intentional about your relationship, you're constantly learning, growing, and evolving together. That's important. And guess what? That creates a love that's not just strong, it's unbreakable. Because when the tough times hit, you're not relying on love alone to keep you together. You've got the tools, the trust, and the partnership to get through anything. Here's the bottom line. Love is the spark, but it's not the fucking fire. If you want a relationship that lasts, if you want something real and solid, you have to be willing to go beyond I love you. You have to put in the work day in and day out. Start by having those hard conversations. Be intentional with your actions. Show up every day for your partner and for the relationship. Because love is a beautiful thing, but it's the effort you put into that love that makes it last. And that's it for today. If this episode hit home for you, share it with your partner, talk about it, use it as a starting point for deeper conversations. And if you know someone who's struggling in the relationship, share this episode with them too. Because we all need to be reminded sometimes that love alone isn't enough. It's the work we put into that makes the difference. And that's it for today. Thank you for tuning into the Bad Influence podcast. If you're ready to start building something stronger than love, then it's time to put in the work. Keep pushing forward, keep showing up, and let's make our relationships stronger than ever. Until next time, this is Bjordan Banderas, and I'll catch you on the next episode. And have a great day.